This is not a complicated process. You got to just remember that it is an assignment of contract. So whatever process you have for dispositions is the same process. Look at the flat fee MLS as just a marketing tool for an assignment.
Guys, welcome back to video 10 in this Masterclass series that I'm doing with Tony Mont. Tony, this has been so amazing. We've been covering all the different exit strategies for your real estate business and deep diving into some of these. We're back in the chairs here. We've been doing some whiteboard videos. Hope you guys are enjoying the series so far. Leave a comment and let us know your biggest takeaways. We'd love to hear from you. All of these videos are going into a playlist, so be sure to check that out as well. And Tony flew all the way here from the States to Puerto Rico. We're here in the event center of my hotel, and we've spent 2 days now just putting together all of this content for you. And so we're hoping you're getting a lot of value out of this. And Tony, I've learned a ton. Thank you so much for your expertise. Tony is one of the biggest players in our industry, doing 50-some transactions, at any given time. So big operation, big business. And you've been there, done it, you've seen it all. And what's been amazing is you've been able to really grow your business so well by having multiple exit strategies. We've been referring to that as like tools in your toolbox. And the more tools you have, the more options you have, the more opportunity you have, the more you can capitalize on different situations that you're running into. And so it's just allowed you to become this very versatile investor that can do this business from so many different angles. And that's the point of this series, guys, is to help you grasp the ideas around multiple ways of doing deals so that you can really build a profitable, successful business.
Right, and to be able to do those 50 deals at any given time, you need all these exit strategies. And when we talk about the exit strategies, it's really understanding the market and understanding your buyer, which then helps you lock up the deal with the seller. If you don't have a wide range of exit strategies and actually understanding them and diving into the numbers, we talk a lot about logic and numbers in this series, and that's what it takes so you can clearly explain what's going on with your seller and how the market's going and why you're able to come up on your price or why you're so low on your price because of what the market is telling us. And it helps you then market this deal once you get it under contract to the right buyer at the right price. Because you can leave a lot of money on the table if you don't understand what the market's doing and what buyers are buying these properties and what strategies you can use to exit it. Is it going to go to a fix and flipper? Is it going to go to a buy and hold person? Is it going to go to a retail buyer? Are we going to take it down and then sell it? And there's so much that goes into all of that. And I hope the audience sees how much effort we put into it on the whiteboard. And I thank you again for having me down here. I love doing this stuff. And what I really love is when people comment and say, hey, this helped me, or these two guys, we have a video together where somebody's like, these two guys are the greatest. And they both helped me so much in my business.
Well, we delete all the negative ones.
Yeah, we get rid of those. But that's why we do this, right? We want to help and we want to prove to everybody, like, these are real numbers that we've been putting on the board. Like, this is a realistic deal.
Yeah, these are very realistic numbers.
Very realistic numbers in situations where anybody out there can do this with a little bit of work and a little bit of knowledge, right?
And guys, it's all developmental too. Like if you're just getting your head around like one exit strategy, great. Start there, build a foundation there. Maybe then start to say, okay, let me pick one more of these exit strategies. Let me learn that. Let me practice that. Let me do that one. And just keep expanding. Like the whole goal of this is that we learn and progress, and every day we get 1% better. Mm-hmm. And that's how you get to a Tony Mont level, is you just start with what you've got and work your way through these different scenarios and different exit strategies. And this is, I think, of our docket of exit strategies. There's probably more, so we'll keep adding over time probably, because we could deep dive into some other ones, but these are the main ones. And there's one more that you and I have already done a video about, which is the assignment. So it's still the traditional wholesale assignment model or method, but the way that we're finding the buyer is way different than what most wholesalers do, and that's utilizing the MLS. And the MLS, guys, is just the marketplace where real estate agents collaborate to sell real estate. So what's unique about the MLS is You can only participate on there if you're a licensed agent. So licensed agents it's where they post properties for sale. But it is the biggest marketplace for real estate of all. Like there's other platforms out there where people Dispo, like you and I both use InvestorLift quite a bit.
Right.
But the MLS is going to get the most exposure, the most eyeballs, the most amount of people in any given market are seeing what's on the MLS, because once it goes on the MLS, it rolls into Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, Trulia, and all the other websites.
Yeah.
Right?
Not only are agents going to see these deals, but also investors are going to see them that are scouring places like Zillow,
Yes.
when they're just looking for good deals as is properties on the MLS. And what's funny is when we list these properties on the MLS, a wholesale deal that is in rough shape, that is an as is property looking for cash only, we do get some calls from wholesalers, because those are people that are trying to lock up these deals, and we can tell when a wholesaler's calling, and we explain to them we're wholesaling this deal, and we try to work together with them and see if they do have a buyer for it, So it's the same with agents that are calling in, and we're all working together to get this deal done, right? And like you said, the MLS is the biggest platform for buyers. It's always going to be, in my opinion.
Yeah. Some people will make an argument that, I find higher paying buyers not on the MLS. And certainly that probably can happen sometimes, but by and large, it's just logical. Like just think logically. There's no other platform, not Facebook, not any other platform that has as many eyeballs as the MLS.
Right.
Because it goes on all the big public sites. So you have investors, buy and hold guys or fix and flippers, and they're not active on these Facebook groups. They're probably not showing up in some kind of data source. Maybe it's their very first deal. Maybe it's a live-in flipper, or it's a mom and pop first time buy and hold investor, but they are watching the MLS, or they have an agent watching the MLS. So when you bring your deal to the MLS, there are going to be people on there that are interested that you would not have found otherwise.
Yeah, and when you think about it this way, using the MLS is really just a marketing tool for your deal. I think people get confused when I talk about using the MLS for a wholesale deal, and they're like, well, how does this complicated process happen? It's like, no, it's just a marketing tool to assign a contract. That's all you got to look at it as. It's not a novation. You're not novating your contract. You're literally assigning your contract. You're just using the MLS as a platform to market this deal to your buyers. And when we talk about new buyers that are on the MLS and other investors that are coming to the MLS, they're typically paying a little bit higher. I know there is these one-offs that we see where we can get a higher price off market to a buyer's list, but typically the data does show that you're going to get a higher price off the MLS because these investors maybe aren't as savvy as the investors in your buyer's list. They're not trying to beat you up, and they're not on everybody's buyer's list, like you said, and they're not on these Facebook groups. Maybe they're not on InvestorLift, and the only platform they know or use is the MLS, and they're using an agent who is helping them find deals. That agent's trying to get the deal done. They want to make commissions so they can, bring this buyer in at a higher price so they can get a deal. So we see in our business, we've done 400 transactions over the last, 2 years and some change for over $8 million in assignment fees. And in the last year and some change, 60 to 70% of our deals, our assignment deals, our wholesale deals have gotten sold through the marketing them on the MLS.
That's crazy. That's awesome. So guys, I want to make sure you're clear on this, because this is not a novation. It may feel a little bit like that because you're taking it to the MLS, but you're not novating, which go back and watch the previous video where we talked about novations. You're not changing one contract for another to a retail buyer who's getting financing. You're still doing the assignment of contract, which means it has to go to a cash buyer. So it's still your investors, right? It's still your flipper or your buy and hold guy, or it could be like a live-in flipper or a mom and pop, whatever, but they're cash. That's the point. It's a cash buyer. The difference here is you're sourcing and finding that cash buyer on the MLS. So you're not marketing the property for sale. Can't do that. That's illegal because you have a contract. So you're marketing the contract for sale using real estate agents to list it. And typically there'll be an agent that has a buyer, a cash buyer that's involved, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we did a really awesome video. I don't know how long ago that was.
Oh, probably over
2 years
year
ago?
and a half, 2 years ago. Yeah.
But let's do it again. Let's break it down on this video. What are some of the nuance? What are some of the strategies? How do you list and sell an assignment deal on the MLS?
Yeah. One thing before I get into it too is we were just talking about the investors that buy on when we use the flat fee MLS as a marketing source, but you'll be surprised at a certain price point and in certain markets and certain style of homes where you get a lot of cash end buyers if your property's in good enough shape. There's a lot of end buyers out there right now. The baby boomers are downsizing, right?
Do you know the percentage? I looked this up. 30% of all real estate owned is free and clear.
That's crazy.
I had no idea it was that high.
Yeah.
30%.
That's high. Yeah. So imagine that baby boomer that is now in their early 70s, which is selling this big house that they've had forever. It's a 2-story, it's 4 bedrooms where they raised their family in. And now they're saying, what are we doing all this for? I'm sick of going up and down stairs. Let's sell this property, move into a quieter area, and they can sell this home for $400,000 and buy a nice livable home for $200,000. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of those cash buyers out there right now.
Yeah, or let's say it's a guy in his 30s and he's owned his house for 10 years, market appreciates, he sells it, he walks away with $200,000 cash. And now what's he do? He's like, honey, let's go buy a fixer-upper, we'll live in it and fix it up. And now he's a cash buyer. Now he's not an investor. He's not following some formula.
Right.
He's just shopping for a deal. If he gets it for 10% below value, he's happy.
He's happy.
He's going to fix it up himself or self-manage it or whatever. And there you go. There's a cash buyer that is not on any list.
No.
You would never find that guy any other way than the MLS.
Exactly. So the reason we shifted to using the MLS as a platform for marketing was when the market shifted and when the interest rates went up, kind of drastically, right?
Mm-hmm. Pretty quick first, too.
It was very fast. And it was kind of like, everybody jumped into an ice cold swimming pool and it took a few minutes to get used to the cold water, right? And we noticed that 100% in our office where we were, we talked about this on a video, we were kind of order takers. We were getting deals when the market was cranking and literally selling it to, 10 people on our buyers list that were buying everything at exactly what we were asking or above it.
Yeah.
Some hedge funds, just some big buyers that were flipping, 100 houses a year in this market. And they're like, yeah, even if this one sits around before I get to it for 3 months, I'm still making more, and then I'm going to make more money on it when I do flip it because the market was cranking so much. So when the market shifted and all these flippers and the hedge funds stopped buying, and then it didn't really make sense as buy and hold all of a sudden, because if they were to burr it or refinance out of this buy and hold, now their interest rates are higher. So they're just trying to see what's going to happen in this new market before we start buying again. And the flippers had a lot of properties that were waiting to sell, and all of a sudden they were selling them in 10 days, 15 days, and now they have all this inventory sitting and all this capital and this leverage out there, and they're saying, all right, well, let me pump the brakes a little bit. So
I think it felt to me like, I don't have any real statistics on this, I've just maybe talking to a lot of people, but I think 50% of the cash buyers evaporated almost overnight when the shift happened.
It definitely felt that way, right? Probably a realistic number. And when we had, I think it was 26 deals or something like that in our pipeline that we were actively marketing to our cash buyers at the time. And it just got harder because every conversation we were having, I'm going to wait and see what the market does. I'm going to wait and see what the market does. I'm going to wait and see what the market. So nobody was buying.
What was your contract fallout rate during that window?
So here's what happened.
Ours was pretty high.
Yeah. So ours was going to be really high. And another thing that happened during that period is, all my Dispo reps that were on the phones and selling deals and sending emails and texts, they had it pretty easy for, a year and a half, 2 years. And all of a sudden their job got super hard overnight.
They had to work for it.
They had to work for it. And all of a sudden they were all like, yeah, this isn't for me anymore. I got to really work to make my commissions. I'm out of here. And I found myself literally with 20 something deals by myself in my office.
With no team.
Both my Dispo got up and left. And, my partners are calling me like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And I just kind of thought on it for a day, got back in the office, and it just kind of dawned on me. And I said, what we need to do is call all these sellers that we have under contract. Let's get a 2, 3, 4 week extension on our contracts, and let's list all these properties, every single one. Let's take 2 days and list every single property on the flat fee MLS. Like that was like kind of my light bulb moment that went off, right? And it was easy to get the extensions because the sellers did know, okay, the market shifted really hard. We're like, hey, we're going to need a little bit more time on this deal. We got most of the extensions done.
So you had a good reason.
We had a good reason. And what happened was we had done a couple flat fees for really rural areas. And when we got a really rural property, we had this strategy where we would list it on the flat fee. Back then, all you needed was a pre-marketing clause in your contract. You didn't even need an attorney in fact like you do now. It was a lot easier back then to just list the property on the MLS, find a cash buyer, and assign the deal. So we ended up putting all these properties on the MLS. I started doing all these follow-ups, and I just spent 2 weeks, literally 60, 70 dials a day, 4 hours on the phone talking to agents, buyers, and I ended up selling 16 deals in that 2 weeks.
When you were calling, it was just agents that set up showings maybe,
Yep.
and you're calling, hey, what do you like it? What's your buyer want?
Yep.
Working the agent, because now it's on the MLS, so there's a buyer's agent representing that investor.
Yep.
So that's what you mean. You were working those agents.
Trying
to put a deal together.
The follow-ups, negotiating everything, talking them into the market's not bad. You know, you got to get your buyer into this deal, and breaking down the numbers, and was able to dispo 16 of those deals in that 2 weeks for, $200 and something thousand. So I was like, wow. Most of these went off the flat fee MLS. This is a new strategy we absolutely have to use in this climate. I didn't know it would last this long and be as successful as it has been, but it's
become a staple though.
It's a staple. It's our number one way to market to cash buyers right now. And it's our best strategy to assign a deal. Because if you think about it, we don't list our properties on the flat fee, and we'll go into the process. But we don't list them on the flat fee MLS until day 3 of our process. So we've pre-marketed this deal to our VIPs. Once we have photos, we've sent the deal to our VIPs. We've called them. We've emailed and texted the rest of our buyers list. We've cold called new cash buyer data. We've texted that data. We've sent it out on Investor Lift. This deal has been in front of 6,000 people probably by day 3. And if it hasn't sold or been assigned or had a ton of action or soft offers on it, we immediately day 3 go to the MLS because we know we're going to find a buyer on the MLS.
And why? It's just easier if you can move it that way than have to deal with it.
It's easier. We already have that data, and why not send it out to that buyer's list? And 30 to 40% of our deals do sell in those first couple of days, but the ones that take a little bit longer.
But wouldn't you still get a higher paying buyer, or it's still worth it to move it not on the MLS if you can?
Yeah, because we have a range in our office. Like if we run our numbers in our office on a wholesale deal, and either it's going to a fix and flip or a buy and hold, we do best and worst case scenario on a range that we can assign it at, right? So we do a fairy tale ARV where maybe there's an outlier flip that sold for a certain price, but kind of the average is, 10 or 20 grand less than that. We'll put that range in our CRM when we're running comps. And then also on the rehab, we'll say, hey, to get to this fairy tale ARV, it might be an $80,000 rehab, but a more realistic one or an average one is going to be $60,000. And then we'll take that low ARV, high rehab, do the calculation, and come up with a sell at price. We'll take, the high ARV and low rehab and come up with a sell at. So now we have kind of a range that I give my Dispo reps. Hey, if you get an offer within this range, I can see where that makes sense to our buyers.
Take it.
And you could take your offer in between this usually $10,000-$15,000 range.
Are you still getting multiple offers before taking one from your
With
buyers?
that range, we'll take an offer within that range.
Okay.
So that's kind of their way of, having a little bit of freedom and negotiation to where, hey, all I got to do is get them up $5,000, I can assign this deal. Or, hey, they're right in this window, I'll try and get them up. But if not, I can still assign it in the first couple days.
And they're motivated for a higher, because they're on commission.
Commissions,
so
yeah.
They're naturally motivated.
Yep. And within that range, we're still making our good assignment fee,
20, 30, 40.
20, 30, 40 grand. So we're running numbers to where Dispo has a little bit more freedom because, when the market was cranking, we had the rule of 3 to 5 offers before you can assign it for our, under our asking price. But now the market shifted a little bit and you got to shift your processes. Right. And, that's why it's so important to be in the business and understand the market, as an owner, or just even if you're working in for a company and you're on dispositions, like you got to shift with this market. We talk about it being liquid and having its ups and downs. 6 months from now, a year from now, that rule is going to change in my office again, probably. But right now, here's your range. You can assign it. So if you can easily do that, pre-marketing it, or sending it out to our buyers list or sending it on investor list, take that and run with it, and we'll worry about the rest of our deals, right? But if we don't get within that range on an offer, now we go to the MLS, and now we're finding our highest offer, because every single deal that gets sold on the MLS or assigned on the MLS in our office, that went through this first 3-day gauntlet, and the highest offer we got was on the MLS. It's not like we skipped the first 3 days and then just threw it on the MLS.
So you've really validated that you get higher buyers on the MLS.
100%. Otherwise, they would have sold to one of our buyers in our buyers list, and we track that every single month. What's selling to our VIP buyers? What's selling on investor lift? What's selling to our cold call data that we're pulling fresh for each deal? And what is selling on the MLS? And almost every single month, I think last year only 1 month did the MLS get beat by our VIP buyers list. Most of the months.
That was probably an anomaly or whatever, right?
Yeah. We had really good deals and really good markets with really good buyers that kind of went to our VIPs. But another thing that happens too, now if you look at flat feeing your wholesale deal on the MLS, it's $150 to do so. It's basically an inbound marketing spend for Dispo. For $100, if you got, say you got 10 deals on the MLS that you're actively marketing. So basically for $1,000, you're getting 150 to 200 inbound calls
just to build a cash buyer
every
list.
single day to build a cash buyers list, get relationships with agents that work with investors.
Like it's almost worth it just to do that.
It's worth it just to do that, to build your
guys,
buyers list.
If you're unclear on that, what Tony's talking about here is when you go to the MLS, remember you've got 2 sides of real estate agents. You've got the list side, which represents the seller, and you've got the buyer side, which is an agent that works with the buyer. On the list side, since they're working for you, there's flat fee services. And do you use broker lists?
We use broker lists. We use a new company called Vacant, Beycome. They're really good as well.
Yeah, so these are flat fee services where you're not getting, the agent's not going to do open houses, all these things. They're not going to do anything for you other than put it on the MLS, which is all you want because you know how to negotiate and do a deal, right? So it's a service that's very cheap. Broker list is like $150. You get like 20 pictures and a description. And that's it. They're going to just pass on to you any interested buyers. Right. So then the buyer's agent that's interested is going to reach out to you, and then you'll have to work the process. But you're not paying now a 3% fee
to a listing agent,
to a full service listing agent. You're paying this bare minimum number just to get your property on the MLS. That's the difference. Flat fee. So when you hear Tony talking about flat fee, that's what he's talking about. And what the point he's making is he's saying, if all it costs me is $150 to get my property on the MLS, which is creating now buyer's agents with buyers inbounding now interested in the deal, setting up showings, calling about it, then what you're doing is you're now gathering all this intel, this data to then create a buyer's list, because now you're like, okay, here's an agent who's got a buyer On your next deal, you're calling that agent and saying, hey, is your buyer interested in this property? We've profiled you. We know you represent a buyer that's looking for deals. So you're doing mass buyer list building at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, think about what your Dispo reps make per hour, and think how long it would take them of outreach to have 100 phone calls that come in a day where we can qualify an agent and put them in our buyers list. Like, how long would it take them, and how much money would it cost you if they were just doing outbound to build that buyers list? It would take forever.
Nowhere near $150.
Nowhere near $150. So it's a very efficient way to build a buyers list. Every single agent that calls, we check and see if we've talked to them before. We see if they're on our buyers list already. If not, we vet them. We go through our process. We ask the right questions. We get them in our buyers list. And then, like you said, the next time we get a deal, now they're going to be on that day one, day two, where we send a deal. And hopefully, eventually, if you're in a specific market or just a couple markets and you do this, your buyers list becomes so strong over a year, 2 years, where you are selling your deals in that day one, day two, and you don't have to use the flat fee MLS is the hope. We don't have enough data there yet because we haven't been in one specific market with enough deals long enough. We're kind of spread out, and we've only been doing this a little over a year, but eventually I could see the flat fee MLS becoming a strategy that, comes later on down the line because you have such a big buyers list from using it so much.
Yeah, and you may still do it just to continually
add more
find
buyers.
Another buyer. Every day there's a new buyer in the market, right?
Yeah.
So that'll continually provide that for you. Now let me ask you, is managing the seller very much like a novation, where because you're getting the seller to agree to allow you to openly market the property, then they're going to see it later on the MLS for a higher fee, just like a novation. Is that process very similar with the seller?
Yeah, it's very similar with the seller. We do not get a lot of pushback on that.
Is it because they're mostly investor type properties?
Yeah, they're mostly investor type properties, and the seller is usually distressed, and they want what they want for this property. You've agreed on a price, and I would say, maybe 1 out of 20 will even say that they saw it marketed on the MLS. They really don't even care or see it. And when you go through our contract with them, this is one thing you need, and I'll start getting into the process here, where a couple things you need to list on the MLS is going to be a pre-marketing clause in your purchase agreement, which states exactly what we're going to do. Mr. Seller, you're going to allow us to list the property on the multiple listing service and other websites to market the assignment of this contract. And even if you read that verbatim to a seller, most of the times they say, what's the multiple listing service? What does that even mean? Like, they don't even really care. They want the money that you promised them, and they don't really care what you do afterwards.
But how's that different than a novation? Because a novation seems like they're maybe more savvy, or...
Yeah, I think novations are typically a little bit more savvy, or they can be. And it's a little bit different process because you need a longer period on innovations. There's going to be true inspections and appraisals and a listing agent involved, and maybe open houses. There's a lot more going into it. If you just look at the MLS simply as, we're going to do this process just like we do any other wholesale deal. We're going to, set a day for walkthroughs that works for everybody. We're going to get 5-6 buyers out there that day. We're going to take the best
earnest money.
Yeah, we're going to take the best and highest offer, ask for non-refundable earnest, and still close in a timely manner for cash.
It's no different.
It's no different. Yeah, we get off and veer off because we keep saying MLS, and people look at it that way of, how is it so similar to novations? It's not. It's literally just marketing and sticking to your process on assigning this contract. Whatever you do to your buyers list on a wholesale deal when you're assigning a contract, you do the same exact thing if you're using the MLS. You're just getting, buyers usually with agents.
Now I'm trying to think, are there any markets where you cannot market a contract for sale on the MLS?
Yeah, so with the contract that you're using with the pre-marketing clause, that's the first thing you need. The second thing you need now is an attorney in fact document, which is basically a limited power of attorney that you don't need notarized. That's going to be the most important document you need to sign listing agreements and disclosures on behalf of the seller to list on the MLS.
So then the seller has to basically give you permission to do the listing, because you want to be able to sign listing things and talk to buyers and do all that without having to go back to the seller all the time. Right?
Yeah, because if you're using a flat fee service, you want to be able to sign on behalf of the seller the listing agreements, because you're putting a price on there now, what you want to sell it for with your assignment fee baked in.
You might do a reduction.
You might do reductions. You want to control that whole aspect of it. When it comes to disclosures, we get the seller on the phone and ask them those disclosure questions, but we can still sign on behalf of them with the attorney in fact. So you can use...
And that's just an additional document on top of your purchase and sale agreement.
Yeah, you need it as a separate document. It can't be baked into your purchase agreement anymore. So we've seen this progression, and we're going to talk about it in a later video of all the regulations that are coming. There's regulations on the MLS too. And like I said, a couple years ago, all you needed was a pre-marketing clause. Then you needed a pre-marketing clause with an attorney in fact that we would put into the purchase agreement. Now the attorney in fact has to be a separate document. So there's...
This is North Carolina.
This is pretty much everywhere.
Okay. So that's
pretty much everywhere. So to answer your question though, is there any states that you can't do this? Pretty much all the states that have the hardest regulations are the states where it's hard to do this. Now, a non-notarized attorney in fact doesn't work anymore in certain states. Like Ohio, certain parts of Ohio are getting tricky, certain parts of Indiana. There's certain parts of, I'm trying to think of all of them, but usually the places we hear that are crunching down on wholesaling have the regulations where now you need a notarized limited power of attorney to sign listing docs,
Or, if we're looking at just some of the traditional regulations is the wholesaler himself might need to be licensed.
Yes, or that, exactly.
So you would think that you're fine because it's, there's a listing agent who's licensed and it's going through an agent process, which is what a lot of them want. But some of the regulations are requiring that the wholesaler is also licensed. So
yeah.
So then in that case, you could still do a flat fee or whatever, but they're just requiring you as the business owner have a real estate license.
License.
That's not really a marketing on the MLS issue. But I think the point here though, guys, and this is the, Tony and Jerry disclaimer, is real estate's governed state by state. So you need to be aware of the laws in your state.
Yeah.
Because they could change tomorrow after we release this video. And so do your own homework about what you can and can't do in your market.
Right.
That's all things. Like that's not just this strategy, but all strategy.
Yeah, it's hard to dive into each market, because, and like you said, each state has their own rules, each region and counties have their own. There's multiple MLSs within a state. And like I said, in Ohio, there's some where you can list with an attorney, in fact, non-notarized. And then there's some areas of Ohio, they're like, no, we need a limited power of attorney notarized.
And you even have like
depends.
On market contracts. So this would be if you're buying on market, where in the state approved contracts that agents use, there are no assignment clauses in those state approved contracts, or there's a clause that says, check this box and the seller has to agree that you're going to sign the contract, right? So all that stuff varies state by state.
Yeah, it really does. But 95% of the time you're able to do this pretty easily with a pre-marketing clause in your purchase agreement and an attorney, in fact, that you don't need notarized, you just need signed as a separate document. We get that signed as we get our purchase agreement signed. So we have the option on every single transaction to list it on the flat fee MLS.
Coming back after the fact asking for it. Yeah.
No, because then it's a scarier document. It's something unique. If it's just part of your contract, it's the last page. It's the last thing they sign. They've already initialed and signed a bunch of times. And it's not a scary document. You're just allowing us to market it and sign on your behalf.
Yeah, and you do some cool things with the buyer's agents that come forward to handle their commission. Because, and it'll be interesting to see how this changes now with the commission reform.
Yeah.
Because now it's all up for grabs, like how they get paid.
Right.
So it'll be interesting. I'll let me know as you start to go through that. I mean, it doesn't go into effect until July or whatever, but it'll be interesting to see how that's impacted. But typically, you want to manage that buyer's agent and their compensation, because typically the seller would pay That's the old way, right? The seller would pay the buyer's agent's commission.
Yeah.
So how do you handle that buyer's agent?
Yeah. So you really got to educate the agents, the buyer's agents that are calling in about this property. And you got to be very upfront and transparent from the first phone call. Because a lot of times the first two things they're going to ask you is, are you the listing agent on this property? No. Oh, you must be the homeowner. No, I'm not. So then you gotta let them understand your role in this
Wholesaling
transaction.
101, here we go.
So we right off the bat, we just say, actually, we're assigning this contract. And we just hit it just like that to see what their objections are or see how they react to it. Most times, they're 100% okay with it. You get these one-off agents that are, oh, you're a wholesaler, I don't want to do a deal with you. But we have a talk track with that too. Like, I understand completely, Mr. Agent, but why is that? Did you have a bad experience with a wholesaler? Tell me about that experience. And then we reassure them we're a real company that does real transactions, everything by the book, and we try to get them on board.
Well, and think about it. I mean, they're representing an investor.
Yeah.
So they're probably sort of investor friendly. They're not going to be, if they have issues with wholesalers, why are you even representing an investor to begin with? You know what I mean? So I think most of those types of agents are going to be past that. Whereas a lot of like super retail type agents that are anti-investor, they would never work with an investor anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So,
those are agents that say, I mean, I've heard of them, but I have no idea how to do them. And I've never done a wholesale deal. Then you really got to explain the process. But you're absolutely right. For the most part, the agents calling in are working with investors. They've done wholesale deals. They've done assignments.
They at least know what it is.
They at least know what it is. And we just explain to them exactly what happens. And we got to use our preferred title company and all that. But to get back to commissions are negotiable, to get a deal done. And we negotiate commissions on every deal. It's you don't want to hit it too low where they're not going to be sending this deal to their investor. Mm-hmm. You want to work with this agent. You want to make sure they get paid too, or somehow they get paid, whether it's on this transaction or when their buyer flips the property and then they're going to list it. So that's the first thing we ask them is, hey, if you get rid of your commissions on this deal, which we put 2.5% to market it, but now that the property's on the MLS, I'm getting a ton of phone calls. There's a ton of interest. I'd hate for your buyer to miss out on this opportunity. If we're paying your 2.5% commissions, I would come in at a really strong offer, maybe over asking, put your commissions in your buyer's hands, or if he's going to flip this property, maybe just make your commissions on the back end. But I only say that, Mr. Agent or Mrs. Agent, because I don't want you missing out on this opportunity. Now, if you're stuck at the 2.5% and you're still our best and highest offer with us paying that commission, absolutely we'll assign you the deal. I just want to let you know what's going on with it and the interest I have in it.
Yeah, and it's just such a great way to handle that, because then you put the ownership back on the agent to solve their own issue of their commission. Like, come in with a higher offer that offsets that, or work it out with your buyer. Maybe they'll work it out with you some other way in the back end, like you said, on the resale, or catch you on the next one, whatever. But you're proactively managing that process with that agent on how we're going to handle you getting paid. I'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this video today, right here where I'm recording at the Looking Glass Hotel and Event Center. Located in the heart of San Juan, Puerto Rico, just 10 minutes from the airport and walking distance to the best restaurants, shopping, and beaches, this newly renovated hotel is the perfect spot for meetups, events, retreats, and podcasting. So if you want to create an unforgettable experience, come to the Looking Glass Hotel and Event Center. Click the link below this video in the description for more details.
Yeah, and say they are the best and highest offer with us paying 2.5%, then we're simply sending them a 2-paragraph, very generic commissions agreement that says, here's your buyer, here's the agent, here's us, here's the seller. We're going to pay 2.5% commissions on the sale of this property. We sign it, they sign it, we send it into title. They get paid out of the HUD just like they would on a regular transaction, so they feel good about it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so
it's not that complicated.
It's not complicated. This is not a complicated process. You got to just remember that it is an assignment of contract. So whatever process you have for dispositions is the same process. Look at the flat fee MLS as just a marketing tool for an assignment. It's nothing more than that. You're going to have a different talk track with the agents. You're educating them. You're telling them exactly what happens on this transaction, just like you would a buyer that called in off your buyer's list. And then you just need your pre-marketing clause in the contract, and you need this separate attorney in fact sign.
And are you, with your Dispo guys, are you compensating them any differently, or do they deal with that agent just like they would a buyer?
Yeah, just like they would a buyer.
And
they
prospected and follow up and all the same ideas.
Yep. So then that agent goes right into our buyers tab for that deal because they reached out about it. We schedule walkthroughs. They put their offer in. That's all documented in that deal in our CRM. And then we have a list of buyers now that we follow up with and try and get this deal done.
Yeah. Amazing. Man.
Yeah.
Such a cool process. Like, why do we not hear this more? Why is this not being taught more? I know very few wholesalers that do this, but it's again, it doesn't fit every single deal. You try to move it without doing it first, but it's another tool in your toolbox that's allowing you to be this versatile investor. I mean, you have a responsibility as a wholesaler to get the highest paying buyer on every deal you do. If you're not, you're robbing your family, you're robbing your business, you're robbing your employees.
The seller,
the buyer, like your job is to get the best deal you can and bring it to market to the highest paying buyer. You know, one of the challenges that I see a lot of wholesalers do is they get lazy and they keep taking their deals to the same buyers every time. And what happens then is pretty soon you're a
order taker.
You're an
employee of the buyer.
You're a cash buyer employee.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And because they're going to start, hey, give me a deal, and I need to get this one a little bit lower. I'll catch you on the next one. And you're leaving money on the table. Why? Because you're too lazy to go look for and extract out of the market the highest paying buyer. It's work.
Right.
It's work.
You should be adding buyers to your buyers list every single day on every single deal.
The best scenario would be you never sell the same property to the same buyer twice.
Right. Exactly. I've heard that.
It happens.
Yeah. And I've heard you say that. It makes so much sense because the new buyers and the buyers that are fresh investors, like you ask a lot of people, anybody that is in real estate and actively flipping or investing, how did your first deal go? Most of them are going to say, I broke even, I lost money, I learned a lot on that first one.
I hear that so much.
And that's going to happen on a lot of these investors, these new investors that are buying on the MLS. They're used to the MLS numbers. They're used to, getting smaller margins. They're used to using an agent who isn't usually great at negotiations when they're talking to a really good wholesaler, right?
Yeah.
So they're buying higher prices.
And this is a controversial topic because I talk to a lot of wholesalers, even in the education space, and they teach this model of, no, get your core group of buyers, you find out what they want, you feed them all your deals, and even if you make less, you've got these relationships with these buyers, and it's just better. And I think I tend to disagree with that. I think the worst thing you could do would be to have a really small buyers list and you keep taking your deals to the same buyers.
I agree.
You're not going to be getting the highest price.
No, you're not. And we saw it happen with the market shift. The wholesalers and the business that were taking every deal and selling it solely to hedge funds, all of a sudden overnight had zero buyers because they weren't building
no business. Their business was out of business.
Completely gone. And it, on a micro scale, it happened with us. We had a decent buyers list back then, but we were just selling to the biggest flippers and buy and hold guys in the area, hedge funds or not. And then once the market shifted, they, took a step back. And then that's when we really started diving into our process and getting this really robust buyers list and we're seeing it now. And I mentioned it earlier where, almost all of our deals were selling on the MLS in the beginning of that market shift. And it's slowly getting chopped down because our front, 3-day process, now that our buyers list is so robust, a lot of, like I said, there's months now where more deals sell to our VIPs than the MLS. And it wasn't like that a year ago, when we first started this strategy. So I agree 100%. I think, if anything can happen where your 5 buyers stop buying and now you're sitting there, with your pants down and how am I going to get rid of these deals? You might as well be building your buyers list every single day.
Yeah.
And on the MLS too, we talk about investors and flippers and buy and hold. You're also going to find your retail buyers that are paying cash for these deals too.
Yep, exactly. So fascinating. I'm so glad that we added assignments on the MLS to our exit strategies. It's not one that's commonly taught, so you guys got it here first. And we've done 2 videos now on this very topic. This one was great too, because I think we did a little bit more explaining some of the areas of it. So I like that a lot, guys. So hope you got a lot of value out of it. Leave a comment and say, and let us know if you're going to be doing an assignment on the MLS. We'd love to hear your feedback on it. And if you have done it, or if you've learned it from Tony and I's previous video, also share with us what happened, how it went, how much you made. We'd love to hear that too. Guys, I'm going to put in the description below a couple things. The playlist link to this whole series, so you can stay in tune with us as we do these. Also, some information about Tony, so his socials, so you can follow him and get in his world, and some training that he does. He's got some really good training, and he's got a community too where he'll do live calls and help you walk through this process of doing all these multiple different exit strategies. Check that out as well. Guys, leave a comment and tell Tony how much you appreciate him, and say, Tony, you're a flipping genius, because you are, Tony. Thank you again for your expertise. And stay tuned, guys. We got some more videos still to come in this series, and we're looking forward to that, and looking forward to bringing you more value and more content. We'll see you on the next video.